Welcome to EV Hub Live, a live video podcast for professionals advancing transportation electrification. To find out more about the show, visit atlasevhub.com/live. There are many reasons for American drivers to go electric, but how do they get the information they need to make the decision? On today's episode, we'll hear from Josh Boone of Veloz about how they were doing just that with the largest EV educational campaign in the United States, using celebrity voices and honest facts. Here's your host, Atlas Public Policy founder, Nick Nigro.
Hey, welcome everybody to EV Hub Live. I'm your host, Nick Nigro, and I'm joined by a good friend of mine, Josh Boone from Veloz. And we're going to talk about their very exciting campaign called Electric for All. Welcome to the show, Josh.
Thank you for having me, Nick.
Yeah, awesome. So you guys are, there's an adage in the NGO world about punching above your weight. You guys are taking that to a whole nother level with the Electric for All campaign. So I'd love for you to first start just by telling the audience here, and the policy audience we have here at EV Hub Live, about what this campaign is all about. What's your goals? How did you get this money? What are we talking about for scale? How are you going to reach all people around the nation? Just give us that quick overview.
Yeah, well, thank you again, Nick, for the opportunity. I think we should start with just the fact that Electric for All is a national EV education campaign. It is powered by Veloz. So Veloz means fast in Spanish, and really drives directly at our mission, which is to electrify transportation across the country as fast as we possibly can. So we are a national, nonpartisan nonprofit comprised of leaders from all walks of the EV ecosystem. So this includes automakers, this includes national charging providers, this includes electric utilities, transportation network companies like Uber and Lyft, zero-emission vehicle autonomous companies like Zoox and Waymo, NGOs, state and local government, and many, many, many more. So really, one of Veloz's core programs is our Electric for All education program. And we were lucky enough this summer in July to launch what we believe is the nation's first nonprofit-led EV education campaign, talking about the many benefits of EVs to folks across the country at this scale. So we're really excited to have launched this campaign in July. And so we're just over 3 months into it, and there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah. And it's fabulous to see, so much money flowing into advertising at such a critical time for electric vehicles. I think, we're in a media age where there's a lot of misinformation out there. And even if it's true information, it's really hard to break through. People are siloed in where they get their news from, or even their advertisements. Shows are on all these different channels now. It's such a different environment than when you and I were growing up. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about how this campaign is going to reach everyday people. How do you break through in today's media and entertainment environment?
Yeah, so our Electric for All kind of theory of change includes all three aspects of the typical awareness and education funnel. So when we're doing any sort of campaign work, we're looking at upper funnel kind of awareness to make folks aware that electric vehicles exist and the benefits. Then as we activate them, we want to provide them education. We want to provide them tools where they can learn about what makes and models are available, what incentives are available, learn about home charging, public charging, all the parts of going electric. And then, of course, at the bottom of the funnel, we really, really want to activate people to take action. So we know that driving an EV is believing in EVs. So we want to give people the opportunity to go take a test drive. We want people to go to the dealers and get a feel for what it's like to drive an electric vehicle. So that's kind of our overarching strategy. And we know that we've got to reach folks with different messages and different tactics at different parts of that funnel. You're right. The media world is fragmented. And so people are, looking at media and experiencing media in many different ways today. Some people are on social media. Some people are online through websites. Some people are watching streaming TV. Some people are watching broadcast TV, or some people are listening to podcasts. So what we know is we have to be everywhere. So our campaign is really kind of a 360 approach. So we are trying to leverage the funding that we were able to secure and try to thoughtfully and strategically reach people where they are.
So what does that, how does it manifest itself though? Because you just mentioned all kinds of different ways of doing advertising and consumer education. Give us some examples of what this thing is going to look like, either in the past or some things that you all are cooking up.
Yeah, so let me first of all convey that this is Veloz's 5th campaign. So we had 4 campaigns that we successfully did in the state of California, which is my home. And so this is our 5th campaign, and it is a natural next part of our strategy to take our Electric for All campaign national. So the one thing that I'm really excited to share is that to date, through all of our campaign work, we've had about 1.7 billion impressions. So that's about 5 times the population of the country. And so, there's not a direct correlation, to each American, but certainly we're really excited with that reach. Our campaign is focused on people that are in the market to buy a new vehicle in the next, I would say, 6 months to 2 years. And that's really, kind of critical because it's, although a large amount of funding, probably the largest amount ever given to a campaign like this, we still have to prioritize our budget as we think about what messages reach across the country and are there like regional differences. So quickly to get to your kind of initial question, the campaign has 2 phases. Our initial phase is a very direct approach where we're messaging consumers on the benefits of EVs, and we're using predominantly kind of a digital and social approach to do that. And then as we move into the second phase of the campaign, we are bringing real people to talk about their real experiences around their time with electric vehicles. We're doing that through a social influencer campaign. And then we'll talk a little bit about later, probably what to look forward in 2026, but a lot of different components of the campaign for sure.
So when you say, I have to ask, just social media, influencers, what's that mean? Like, what are we talking about here? Instagram, TikTok would help me understand.
Yeah, so we're in the process of partnering with several dozen social media influencers. So yes, that could be across Instagram, that could be across TikTok, it could be across YouTube. There's a variety of ways to leverage, but really what we're trying to do is to reach more people with direct messaging and leverage the partnership with these social media influencers to really kind of meet people where they are, meet real people. So what we're trying to do with the campaign is meet people where they are digitally, and we're also trying to meet people physically and kind of meet them in the parking lot. And that'll be something that, we're doing kind of later on in the campaign. So we're really trying to use both micro and macro influencers.
Yeah. And I also have another follow-up just about this 1.7 billion. Like, that just sounds like insane to me. I was telling you in the green room here of the show, like, we'll be lucky to get a couple hundred hits on this. It's valuable people. Obviously, our audience is amazing and we love them, but it's a small audience. So how do you feel like you're able to reach this many people? Is this the success of the folks that you're working with in your media campaign, consultants and whatever? Give us a little bit of the story about how that actually works. Because I think, in the policy world, we've been talking about consumer education for a very long time. It's just like, well, if the autos would only do ads in the Super Bowl, like everybody would buy an EV. It's obviously not that simple. So give us a little bit of the inside scoop on, how this actually works.
Yeah. So first of all, my view is that all, positive EV education efforts and campaign efforts, they're additive and they're all needed. So we need the automakers, selling performance. We need organizations like Veloz being a national credible voice to educate people, because we know from our data that people have lots of questions. So I think in terms of, the folks out there working on education efforts, we need it all, and we need to be coordinating and working together. I think in terms of the National Electric for All campaign, It's a very strategic digital approach. So rather than scattershot, it's really focused. So we have access to a national database. We can understand what consumers and consumers' perceptions and appetites and even psychographic profiles are. So we know we know what messages are working. We know what media is working, and we know what messengers work. So in our world, those 3 M's are really important. So message, messenger, and media. And we have to think really thoughtful then around how we prioritize our media spend. I think it's also important to understand that, a lot of people think about a campaign like this as being only a national media buy, but it's really paid media, it's earned media, and its own media all working in concert together that really bring us those kinds of numbers, really.
Could you explain, just for the audience who, folks particularly who aren't super familiar with media and such, what do you mean by earned media and paid media?
Yeah, so like earned media, for example, when we launched the campaign and we partnered with celebrity talent like Nick Offerman, it gives us the opportunity to get lots of visibility. It gives us the opportunity for national tier 1 media outlets to pay attention to what we're doing and write about the benefits that the campaign is bringing and the resources that the campaign is bringing to folks across the country. There's a lot of different kinds of, earned media, but we've been able to be picked up in many outlets, from the New York Times to Ford to Fast Company. And it's really giving us the opportunity to bring visibility to the campaign, and the opportunity that everyone in this space has to leverage the campaign to really, accelerate this movement forward during a time where there's a lot of headwinds, if you will. There is also broadcast TV, and there's news radio, there's podcasts, there's a lot of opportunity that we get. And then on the owned media side, that's like Veloz's own assets. So like our electricforall.org website is a key strategy in this campaign. So all of our messaging points people, the call to action, if you will, is to visit electricforall.org, which is an ever expanding free online resource that we can talk a little bit more about, to really give people the tools they need to take action. And we know when people have facts and when they have information, they take positive action. And so we will continue to invest and grow that tool as we move throughout the life of this campaign and into what we do next.
Yeah. Well, I will say, I hope that people will take good positive action when they get the facts straight and such. So you mentioned Nick Offerman, so now I got to ask, he's a pretty famous, actor in Hollywood. You've also had another famous person in Hollywood represent you all before as well, and it was a spokesperson. So tell us about what's it like to work with famous people like that, and why would they want to work on, electric vehicle education campaigns? It's not the sexiest topic out there. So tell us how that worked out.
Yeah, well, we need all different kinds of voices carrying this message, and certainly, working with, global celebrity talent like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Nick Offerman, and past campaigns we've worked with Mark Ruffalo, known as the Hulk, and the Marvel series, also, Chloe Bennett. And, these folks have worldwide recognition. And what's really important for us is to understand, when we partner with them, what kind of passion and belief do they have around electric vehicles. So for example, Nick Offerman, he's an EV enthusiast. He drives an electric vehicle. We wanted to partner with him because he brings not only a very recognizable voice, but a very kind of down to earth, straight talk voice, which is what our data said that we needed to do in part of our campaign. So in the campaign that we have running right now, it's a very direct to consumer message around some of our key pillars. He also believes, that, it's a really important and responsible thing to get us off of fossil fuels for the current and future generations. So we try to look for celebrity talent that not only has, global recognition, but also has credibility around the space. So we've been fortunate to do that. I think the other key ingredient for our work, and we have a track record of doing this, is to really kind of find that nexus between, Hollywood talent and celebrity star power mixed with, thoughtful and strategic marketing, because we know that people buy electric vehicles and vehicles generally emotionally. So you have to tug on people's heartstrings a little bit in order to get attention and attraction. So you might recall in one of our Nick Offerman pieces that he says that the easiest way to save on gas is to don't buy gas. So he's very direct in that way, and his voice has proven to be a really helpful partnership in the campaign so far.
So let's talk a little bit more about these pillars you mentioned in a moment ago. Tell the audience here, what are the areas of focus, the subjects that you're focusing on with these resources that you have access to? There's a lot of reasons that folks are investing in electric vehicles or trying to advocate on their behalf, if they're in the advocacy community or in the industry. You could go from the environment to energy security to the affordability angle, the jobs angle. There's all kinds of different stories you can tell in the EV ecosystem. So what are the kinds of pillars of the stories you're trying to tell?
Sure. Yeah. And before we go, maybe to that question, we can go back just briefly and I can answer your question about Arnold Schwarzenegger. So, for those that have been working in policy, I mean, not only is he a global superhero, not only is he, known as the Terminator, but he was the governor that signed AB 32, which really set the state of California's framework around climate policy and can be argued really put the market, kind of the rebirth of the EV market in California, if you will. So he was really eager to be, part of the movement back in 2019 when we did Kicking Gas, which he starred in. But in terms of the messaging pillars, that is a question that we get asked daily. I think for those of you working in the EV space, those of you that are working in EV policy, this is a ever evolving conversation. But I think based on the research that we did and continue to do, we know that Americans are very interested in the conversation around affordability, right? So everybody's watching their wallets these days. So affordability in the terms of short-term savings, incentives, long-term savings, savings on fuel, savings on maintenance. Certainly, we're messaging around charging and the opportunity that charging brings, whether it's charging at home overnight while you sleep on hopefully a special time of use rate from your local utility. We're messaging new and used EVs. We're messaging incentives. And so our charge really is to figure out how to take those policy conversations, kind of lay that over top of what we're seeing in the data, and there's a lot of overlap, and then figure out how to simply and effectively and communicate that across the country in a way that really inspires people and encourages them to act. So, for example, let me give you a very specific example. So in our space, Nick, we talk a lot about the benefit of EVs, and we talk about this little acronym called TCO, or total cost of ownership, right? And so that. Yeah, so one has to think about, okay, well, how we know that Americans are sensitive to and the affordability message is something that's on everybody's mind. So how do we effectively and thoughtfully message that? And we've got several ways to do that. And one of them is just messaging around the long-term savings that one can experience when having an EV. So we talk a lot about savings on not buying gas. We talk about what it costs to fuel an EV with electricity. We talk about fewer moving parts. We talk about lower maintenance costs and convenience. And so we get to wrap those themes up into some really creative messaging. And then what we do, and no oil changes, for example, right? So what we get to do is then we get to encourage people, once they get served that message or that ad, or they hear it on a podcast, is to visit electricforall.org. And we've added, just in the last few weeks, we've added 3 new tools to that website. And we're going to be doing some communication formally about that in the next week or two. But we added a used EV lookup tool, so you can put in your zip code and it will look up all the used EVs. And these are not just random listings; these are actually EVs that you could go to a lot and see and drive and purchase or lease. We also added a free savings calculator. We are aware that there are many good savings calculators out there. Some of them cost you to use, but this one is free. And it looks at how many miles you drive. It looks at less maintenance. It looks at, if you're going to be charging at home and the savings that are there. So it looks at total savings. And what we know is you can save around $2,000 a year on electric vehicles. So we get a chance to message that. And then
Is
really
that
fun.
kind of work, sorry, just real quick, is that kind of work tailored to where people live? Just because, obviously for the used vehicles, it must be, but when it comes to savings and such, the savings vary pretty widely depending on where you are.
Right. So it's got zip code intelligence that allows us to understand, based on a zip code that you put in, what what the price of gasoline is. And then it looks at like what the average price of maybe a home, electricity rate is. And so it takes that into the calculation, right? Because it varies by state and it varies by region.
Sure.
The third, and one could argue most interesting tool that we added is the opportunity to ask anything about EVs. So we've added what we're calling an EV chat tool. It's essentially a nonpartisan AI-enabled tool that allows you to put in a question like, where can I find charging in DC? How far can I drive an electric vehicle? Can I charge my car at home? And so those are the reason I'm sharing that is because what we know is as we educate people and as we retarget folks to come back and learn more, people, as they move down that funnel that we talked about, want more information and they want more tools so that they can make really informed choices. Not to mention that with that many impressions and engagements now happening in the campaign, we're getting a lot of questions that can easily be answered by AI tools, and so it's an exciting feature that we've done in partnership with another nonprofit. So it's free to use, and we'll be talking more about that in the coming weeks.
I'm gonna not lie here. I didn't know about that tool, and it sounds really neat, and I'm definitely gonna check it out on Electric for All after we get off the show here, because I do think that's going to be the future of a lot of how we inform the public is to take advantage of this technology. So, I have to ask you, like, what kind of questions have you asked it, and how well did it do at answering it?
Well, as the executive director of Veloz, of course, I go in and try to do a risk assessment, and I ask it all kinds of things.
Yeah.
But I think what I try to put in is things that we get emailed about or get called about, right? So folks ask, you would be surprised, kind of the simplicity of questions that people ask. People want to know, is there a SUV EV? Is there a truck EV? Is there a crossover EV? People want to know, is there, fast charging in my neighborhood? People want to know things like how much will my utility bill go up if I install a home charging or install a NEMA 1450 outlet and charge at home.
Sure.
So you can think of the many questions, and it's a really exciting tool. I would say on the used EV tool, we're still kind of it's formally launched, but it's only been active a couple of weeks, and we've had over 2,000 people interacting with that tool, and we have done zero marketing, zero PR, zero press releases around it. So we know that given the sensitivity around affordability these days, that people are interested in used EVs.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So you mentioned earlier too something about headwinds, and some of those headwinds are blowing west from DC in an unusual way from the normal weather patterns we have, right? And so we just saw the end of the federal EV tax credit 30D just in the last few weeks. There was a huge run up in sales at the time, which might lead people to think that there's a lot more pent up demand for this technology, but that might be now on pause because that incentive is gone. So I wonder if you could talk to the audience a little bit about how you look at consumer education in this moment. We're in this period where the tax credit is now gone. You have a lot of uncertainty in the industry, different calibrations occurring from different companies, and some are doubling down while some are frankly backing away. And so tell us about how you balance all of that with such an important campaign.
Well, the simplest way to describe how to balance all that is kind of like dancing on the head of a needle, Nick. It's a constant dance, but I think what's really exciting about the opportunity and the honor to message the benefits of EVs is back in the summer, when we started learning that the federal tax credit was going to go away. We made a very big pivot and we pulled funding out of our 2026 budget, a sizable amount of funding, and basically did a specialized kind of micro campaign around the fact that the federal tax credits were going to be sunsetting. So we were really encouraging people to take advantage of the federal tax credit. So that's kind of in our short-term cost savings bucket in terms of our messaging pillars. Take advantage and take action. And so what we know is about 600,000 people viewed our incentive finder during that period of time. So there was a lot of interest. I think, we know that national sales and California sales, where I live, were some of the highest sales we've ever seen. And so now to your point, we're entering a new space in Q3 where we no longer have the federal tax credit. So the question we get is, okay, so, Veloz, how are you going to message affordability going forward? And so the good news is that we're still here and the market is still growing, and that our electricforall.org tool not only historically showed federal tax credits, but it shows incentives by zip code at all other levels. So state level, local level. And let's not forget, this, but there's quite a few incentives out there at the utility level, in some cases on vehicles, but in many cases, at least with progressive utilities, on the rate side. So there's an opportunity for folks to, take advantage of that.
So another just a quick follow up on that point. It's just, do you see your campaign? You mentioned you've been talking obviously a lot about affordability, which is the word of the moment. Clearly, I agree with everybody who recognizes that that's top of mind for most everyday people. But the benefits of electric vehicles are not certainly limited to just them being cheaper to operate. They also have some really great performance. So I'm wondering, is there other aspects of your campaign that's going to focus on some of those facets of electric drive?
Yeah. I mean, to your point, we're looking, there's so many things to message. And what we know what we got wrong in prior campaigns, and we've learned from that. And we know what we're getting right.
Do you want to share something that you guys acknowledge?
So for example, on the messaging around attributes there, and it wasn't just Veloz, there were many organizations, messaging around the environmental benefits, messaging around climate change benefits. That does not work. And it is coming very clear through our data that not only does it not work in many cases, remember, this is a national campaign. And so we are messaging across a lot of different, we're messaging across red, purple, and blue states. And we know how messages, what we know on the national level is many of the messaging tactics work across the country. There's a lot of, there's more commonality than there are differences, but there are regional differences. So we are focused predominantly on the messages that around the questions that people are asking. So yes, on affordability, yes, on gas savings, yes, on range. Most EVs get over 300 miles of range, so you can go to your in-laws or not, right? We're messaging around the growing charging infrastructure. But to your point, and we heard this recently at a conference, that electric vehicles are fun. They're fast off the line. They're tech forward. We know that people, like we talked earlier, buy EVs and cars emotionally, and it's wrapped up in their identity. And they want to, it's often the second most expensive thing people purchase after purchasing a home. And so there are a lot of other attributes and benefits, and they're certainly in our, in our bucket of things we want to message, but we have to prioritize. Even with the amount of funding that we have, you can imagine I could spend all of that funding in the San Francisco, media market, and we are trying to spend it across 50 states, and so we have to be very thoughtful and strategic. So we have tiered all 50 states into tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. California's got its own tier in terms of how we're spending and what kind of media channels we're operating in. So you can imagine as you move up into like a tier 1, that would be more of like a ZEV ready state. Those regions are getting a more full-bodied kind of messaging approach. I think the other thing you started to say this too, Nick, is that in a time where policy and regulations are being rolled back, I'm deeply biased and I'll own that. But I think we have the opportunity to really accelerate the market. And I think we do have a big policy lever that's not shovel ready. It's active. It's a national campaign, and it can be leveraged across local governments, state governments. And so we are encouraging anybody and everybody that wants to join this effort. There's ways to partner with us for free. There's ways to add money to the pot and have enhanced marketing and messaging in your particular region. And it really, we need to be, at the rate the policies are being rolled back, we need to be accelerating our strategic communications. And we think this national campaign is a critical component of that work.
Yeah, and we're just about out of time, but I have to double down on what you're saying there around the importance of what you all are doing at this moment. There's a lot of attention on some of the either cancellations in projects or other facets of what some people are calling a pullback in electric vehicles, but there's still a considerable amount of money that's going into the technology. A lot of vehicles are available for sale, and your campaign is here at really an opportune time. So I'm very grateful that you all got funded to do this. And for anybody who hasn't visited the electricforall.org website, I encourage you to do that right away. I know I'm going to go check it out later this afternoon and play around with your chatbot and see what happens, see if I can break it or learn something new. Who knows? But this brings us to the end of the show. Josh, really appreciate you joining us for this episode of EV Hub Live. Thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.